I transmigrated as the mad fool, but now I build the Cold Regent's heart.
Chapter 2. I did not go to the main hall to beg for forgiveness. Only a fool begs when they can negotiate from a position of power, and power in this world, as in my old one, was built on the mastery of resources. Instead, I sought the grave. In the memories of the original Lin Xu, the grave was a corner of the estate behind the stables where the useless things went to die. Broken lanterns, rusted agricultural tools, and the skeletal remains of failed vanity projects. I found it. It was a glorious, oxidized treasure trove. "The young master has truly lost his mind," a stable boy whispered, scurrying away as I began to dig through a pile of water-damaged crates. I ignored him. My eyes were scanning for specific densities. I found a discarded copper warming pan, dented beyond use, but the copper was pure. I found several shards of high-quality quartz from a shattered decorative screen. Most importantly, I found a heavy, rusted box of Imperial clockwork. The original Lin Xu had bought it at an exorbitant price to impress a girl, found he couldn't even wind the mainspring without snapping it, and tossed it into the mud in a fit of pique. I opened the box. My heart, Elias's heart, skipped a beat. Inside were gears. Real, hand-filed brass gears. They were caked in grime and seized by rust, but the teeth were intact. To anyone else, this was a box of expensive trash. To me, it was a modular toolkit. Copper for the heat sinks, quartz for the bearings, and brass for the drivetrain. I murmured, my fingers dancing over the scrap. I can work with this. I dragged the box back to my shed. I spent the next 4 hours in a trance of productivity. Cleaning was the first priority. I used sand and a piece of rough burlap to scour the rust from the brass. I used the remaining alcohol from a half-empty jug I found in the shed, likely the previous Lin Xu's last meal, as a solvent to degrease the movements. Then I began the assembly. I wasn't building a clock. A clock was a passive object. I needed something active, something that solved a problem. The humid summer air of the capital was stifling. In the main house, the servants were likely fainting while waving heavy silk fans for the elders. Inefficient. Using the tension from a salvaged carriage spring and the gears from the Imperial box, I began to construct a centrifugal table fan. I hammered the copper pan into 3 curved blades, balancing their weight by shaving the edges with a piece of flint until they spun with 0 wobble. I used the quartz shards as a makeshift ball-bearing race to reduce the friction coefficient. The most difficult part was the governed escapement. I didn't want the fan to spin wildly and die out in seconds. I needed a steady, rhythmic release of energy. I was finishing the final calibration when the door to the shed was kicked open. "Lin Xu, you lazy, bloated sow! How dare you ignore the matriarch's summons?" It was Su Jin, my cousin by marriage, though the blood was thin and the animosity thick. He was dressed in a pale lavender robe that was far too long for him, held up by a sash of clashing gold. He stood in the doorway, a silk handkerchief pressed to his nose. "Ugh, the smell of grease and failure. What are you doing, playing with dirt?" I didn't look up. I was adjusting the tension on the mainspring with the bent iron rod. "I am busy, Su Jin. The torque is currently at 4.2 Newton meters. One slip and I lose a finger. If you value your life, stay back." "Torque? Newtons?" Su Jin sneered, though he took a step back. "You finally snapped. The matriarch is sending the guards to drag you to the ancestral hall for a lashing. You broke the Emperor's gift, you fool." "I didn't break it," I said, finally tightening the last screw. I simply realized it was an inferior design and decided to improve upon the concept. I stood up, holding the device. It looked like a strange brass-winged bird perched on a wooden block. "Improve?"
Su Jin laughed, a shrill, irritating sound.
Improve?
With that, it looks like a dead crow. Watch, I said. I pressed the release lever. The gears engaged with a soft, melodic whir. The copper blades began to spin. Because of the quartz bearings, the movement was silent. A sudden, sharp gust of cool air hit Su Jin directly in his smug, powdered face. His lavender robes flapped violently. His carefully styled hair began to unravel. What is this sorcery? He gasped, clutching his fan, the manual useless silk fan, to his chest. It's called a stored energy wind generator, I said, watching the blades spin with perfect metric consistency. It will run for exactly 15 minutes on a single wind. It is portable, hands-free, and unlike your poetry, it actually serves a purpose. Su Jin's eyes darted from the machine to my face. I could see the gears in his head turning, the gears of envy and opportunism. "The prince," he whispered. "Prince Jing is coming today for the inspection. He hates the heat. If I showed him this..." He reached out a greedy hand for the device. I pulled it back. A cold smile touched my lips. "This isn't for you, Su Jin. This is my ticket out of this shed." "You think the prince will look at a grease monkey like you?" Su Jin spat, his face twisting. "He values elegance, art. He will see you as a common laborer." "Then let him see," I said, tucking the fan under my arm and walking past him. "I'd rather be a competent laborer than a decorative parasite." I headed toward the main courtyard. I could smell the expensive incense of the prince's arrival. The Cold Regent was here. It was time to see if the man who ran the empire like a machine could recognize a master of the craft.